Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today we're learning more about the arraigned suspect in the murder of Charlie Kirk, plus some of the tough questions FBI Director Kash Patel is facing, and we remember Robert Redford. The 22-year-old suspect in the killing of Charlie Kirk was arraigned yesterday on charges that came with new details about him. Tyler Robinson is accused of shooting Kirk in the neck during a public appearance at Utah Valley University last week. According to court documents, he had been planning an attack for a week, and afterwards he messaged his roommate with whom he was in a romantic relationship. Those were among the details contained in a 10-page criminal information released by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray, who charged Robinson with aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering for instructing his roommate not to cooperate in Kirk's death. After the shooting, Gray said the roommate, who is cooperating and hasn't been charged in the incident, shared text messages between the two. Robinson's roommate described the exchange to police and willingly showed them the messages, according to officials. Robinson's mother told police that her son had become more political over the last year or so and had started to lean more to the left. Meanwhile, Gray said that DNA consistent with the suspect was found on the trigger of the rifle believed to have been used to kill Kirk. Gray also announced he would seek the death penalty, something President Donald Trump has called for publicly. FBI Director Kash Patel faced tough questions from Senate Democrats yesterday as they pressed him on his agency's handling of major investigations, especially the killing of Charlie Kirk. I spoke with USA Today government accountability reporter Erin Mansfield for more.
Hello, Erin.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for hopping on for this. So, notably, law enforcement said they had caught the shooter before he was actually in custody. What happened and how was Patel pressed on this point yesterday?
Yeah, so to be fair, first it was the university. I don't know if you remember news alerts from September 10th, but many of them said Charlie Kirk shot, subject in custody. So first the university made a mistake and they retracted that within about 20 minutes. But then hours after that, Kash Patel, the FBI director, went online and he said they have a subject in custody. And after that, he said something to the effect of, "Thank you so much to our law enforcement partners," basically kind of declaring mission accomplished. He had to retract that later. These were both social media statements. And this is really the kind of cardinal sin he's being accused of, the really big mess up that people are really trying to nail him to the wall over.
And, there were also reports that the crime scene was unsecured. One of our own reporters at USA Today was able to walk around in the small wooded area behind the building where the suspect shot from, even walk into the operations center where the investigation was being held without being challenged. Did any of these issues come up in testimony?
They didn't come up in testimony. My colleague Will Carlos talks about his experience at the scene and his ability to walk around. Kash Patel has said, based on his Fox News comments, he made it to Utah, to the university in the evening on September 11th. And by then, the crime scene had been secured. There had been caution tape up around the wooded area. So what they believe happened is the shooter shot from the top of a building, jumped off the building, kind of ran through a wooded area. And what our colleague is reporting is that he was able to see the trail of evidence. Normally, you would not have been able to get that close, but there was no crime scene tape up. About 24 hours after the shooting, it did get up. So by the time Kash Patel made it out there, the crime scene would have been taped off. But that was a big deal in our reporting. And then there was an incident where my colleague Will Carlos was able to just walk into the center of operations for the investigation. And when I was speaking to a former FBI agent, he kind of went silent on the phone and was like, yeah, that's a problem. The example being that you usually station someone at the door specifically as sort of your bouncer to make sure people who come in are with the investigation or I suppose relevant to the investigation as opposed to observers or members of the public.
All right. Well, Erin, there seem to be criticisms really from both sides of the political aisle in the aftermath of this killing. Did you get the sense during day one of the hearing that both Democrats and Republicans had serious issues with the FBI's initial approach?
There really wasn't. It was very, very partisan. And that's one of the things that's interesting, especially about politics on the right. There are conservative activists who are on the right, who might even be to the right of Kash Patel and many Republicans, who have problems with Kash Patel's performance. But the Republicans in the Senate, who he was speaking to, they really lined up behind him. They spoke about, the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's killing. Chuck Grassley is the senator who runs it. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he even, in his opening statement, he listed out a lot of what he framed as shortcomings of previous administrations, including the notorious Hillary Clinton's emails. So there was a lot of partisan gamesmanship, and this is very common with Senate judiciary hearings and Senate hearings in general.
What's next for day 2 of testimony later today? What's the expectation?
Kash Patel is facing the House. Their committee will be a little bit bigger, might be a little rowdier. One thing to note is that, in front of the Senate, Kash Patel literally got into some screaming matches with Cory Booker and with Adam Schiff. So that's what I would be watching for. They get really intense. They get really excited. Next thing you know, someone's calling another a liar. Someone else is saying, you need to be quiet. That literally happened during Tuesday's hearing. So I wouldn't rule any of that out going into the House.
All right. Erin Mansfield covers government accountability for USA Today. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
The man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson briefly appeared at a Manhattan courthouse yesterday, where a judge swiftly dismissed 2 of the terrorism-related state charges against him. 27-year-old Luigi Mangione's defense team had asked for dismissal of what they called the state's legally and factually unfounded terrorism-related charges. Prosecutors had argued in court filings that Mangione's writings and methodic planning of the attack justified the terrorism charges. New York Supreme Court Justice Gregory Caro wrote in his decision that although Thompson's killing is no ordinary street crime, a murder committed for ideological reasons does not necessarily fit within the state's definition of terrorism. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office said in a statement to USA Today after the hearing that prosecutors respect the court's decision and will proceed on the remaining 9 counts, including murder in the second degree. Mangione, who faces additional charges in Pennsylvania and in federal court, pleaded not guilty to the New York state charges in December. President Trump said yesterday that the U.S. will soon announce a buyer for TikTok. He told reporters outside the White House that he's reached a deal with China and will speak with leader Xi Jinping on Friday. The announcement came before a deadline set for today to sell or shut down the video app. Later yesterday, the White House extended that deadline until December 16th. As we discussed on yesterday's show, since January, Trump has signed multiple executive orders to push back the deadline for when TikTok must be sold. Legendary actor and director Robert Redford has died at the age of 89. I caught up with USA Today movie critic Brian Truitt to discuss his remarkable life and legacy.
Thank you for joining me, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Redford's legacy as an actor and leading man. I mean, what stood out most to you from this astonishing body of work?
I mean, what doesn't? I feel like nobody has a career like this anymore. You look at Butch and Sundance is in 69, and then he just goes on a roll of like Jeremiah Johnson, Candidate, The Sting, Way We Were, All the President's Men, 3 Days of Condor, all before like 76. That's amazing. That doesn't happen anymore. The 1970s were a special time in general with cinema. So many great actors were kind of coming up during that time and making their mark. But just kind of like he had that run, it was just like remarkable. He didn't even get an Oscar for acting. Now he got an Oscar for directing, of all things. But you think of like just The Sting, where his work with Paul Newman with The Sting and Butch and Sundance. And those are iconic roles, just iconic buddy pairings there. And All the President's Men, the best journalism movie ever. And so he has this like just awesome 70s. And then he goes to 80s. He's still working. And then The Natural, again, one of the best baseball movies there is. Out of Africa, I didn't love it. A lot of people do. But he kind of keeps on going. He never really stopped until 2018 with Old Man and the Gun. He's always around. He's doing Sundance. He's obviously doing stuff. But like he kind of kept himself really a part of the Hollywood fabric until somewhat recently. So that's pretty amazing, to have that kind of career and the depth of it.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, Brian, he also found success as a director, winning that Academy Award for Ordinary People. How will his work on that film be remembered, and what do you take away from his directing career?
In the late 70s, early 80s, those were those melodramas that were really important, like Terms of Endearment and Ordinary People. He really kind of captured that family dynamic, how it can get broken and how do you fix it. And he really tapped into it in a really powerful way. It's parents dealing with the accidental death of one of their sons and the attempted suicide of the other one. I mean, kind of like, that's some heavy stuff. Just he directed it magically.
Well, he later founded the Sundance Institute. What inspired him to do so, and how influential did this institute and its film festival become? I mean, this really feels like a major part of the legacy he leaves behind.
We were talking about his directing and his acting, and it's just like, I think he wanted to foster cinema for people, to bring new filmmakers to the fore. And like, before Sundance, there was an indie film scene, but it wasn't what it was until after Sundance. Kevin Smith and Clerks, Quentin Tarantino and his stuff at Sundance. Sundance made those two directors and so many more and put indie filmmaking on a map like it had never been. I mean, kind of like movies had always kind of been in part of this huge studio system. And, Sundance just paved the way for all these kind of fresh new filmmakers to go out on their own and not need a Disney or a Paramount to make a hit. It's a really kind of cool thing to kind of look back on his history and see. We always look at the acting and the directing and his environmental issues and just kind of everything he was kind of involved in. But you look at, kind of he gave a platform for greats, people that we've loved over the last, 20, 30 years in their films. Without Sundance, would we have had Pulp Fiction? Would we have had Ryan Coogler's career? Or, all these people that made their mark at Sundance and just kind of like are now part of like the same Hollywood fabric that he is.
All right, Brian Truitt, USA Today's movie critic, joining me here to discuss the life and legacy of Robert Redford. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your pods. And if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.